Okay, let's unpack this. We often feel absolutely consumed by something.
Quote that.
Whether it's, a problem at work, relationship drama, or just that buzzing anxiety,
Yeah.
it feels all-encompassing, like there's almost nothing else to think about.
And yet, the simple truth is, there always is. The real power isn't in stopping the thinking entirely.
Right.
It's in directing it. Where do you consciously choose to place your attention, your mental energy?
Exactly. And that's really the premise of the source material for this deep dive. We have this intriguing list titled 101 Things More Worth Thinking About Than Whatever's Consuming You. It's less a list of instructions, really, and more like a massive menu of alternative places for your mind to go.
It's a direct challenge, isn't it, to the idea that our immediate worries are the only things deserving of our thought?
Totally.
So the mission for this deep dive is to pull out the most, well, resonant ideas from this list, synthesize their core message.
And figure out how shifting your focus can actually be a practical tool.
Exactly, a tool for gaining perspective and ultimately living a more intentional life.
Because the list suggests this isn't just some philosophical idea. Redirecting your internal focus, even in small ways, can be a kind of shortcut to clarity. So we're going to explore the key themes and some really compelling prompts offered here to give you some concrete ways to maybe take back control of your thoughts.
And it all starts with that moment of recognition, doesn't it? Just acknowledging when you are getting caught up.
Yeah, when that thought loop begins.
Right, when the immediate worry or the problem starts to consume everything else.
Right. And the list doesn't tell you to just like magically stop the loop. It says, okay, that thing is consuming you. Fine.
But
look, here are 101 other potential destinations for that exact same thinking capacity.
it reframes the challenge. It's not about stopping thought, but choosing its object more wisely.
It's about being proactive with your mental landscape.
Yeah, rather than just letting it be dictated by whatever's making the loudest noise right now.
So where does the list suggest we point our thoughts first? One major theme seems to be actively visualizing the future you desire.
And not just in abstract terms.
No, not at all.
Oh.
With really vivid detail.
Point 01 is striking in its specificity. It asks you to think about the way it will feel to have the life you want.
Okay.
But then it grounds it immediately. The place you'll live, the clothes you will wear, what you will buy at the supermarket.
Wow, okay.
How much money you'll save, what work you'll be most proud to have done.
It even gets down to things like what color your sheets will be or what you'll take photos of.
Right. It's about making that future feel tangible, almost real enough to touch.
Giving you something concrete to sort of orient towards.
And this connects directly to how you define progress and success, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, point 05 prompts you to think about quantifying the year in terms of experiences and growth, not just, the usual metrics.
Okay.
Like how many books you want to say you read, how many projects you've completed, how many connections you fostered or rekindled.
So it shifts the measure of success inward, makes it more personal.
Exactly. And similarly, point 64 asks about enough.
Enough.
Yeah, what's enough money, enough love, enough productivity, which is a powerful challenge, I think, to that constant societal push for more.
That's a big one.
You can see how this detailed visualization, this definition of enough, it leads naturally to thinking about dream moments. That's point 65.
Okay.
But then, importantly, it pivots immediately to actionable steps. Point 67 is what actions you could take to move yourself in the direction of the life you want.
So it's not just dreaming. It's connecting the dream to doing.
Precisely. What's synthesized here is that deliberate, detailed visualization isn't just like wishful thinking.
It's more like mental mapping.
Yeah, exactly. It clarifies your values and it actually helps reveal the path forward. It transforms a vague hope into something more tangible, a destination with steps you can identify.
Okay, so looking forward is key. But the list also puts a lot of emphasis on turning inward, doesn't it? That deep self-reflection piece.
A very strong emphasis, yes.
And there's a really important nuance here, I thought. Point 02 talks about working on yourself. Not because someone else doesn't love those parts, but because you don't.
Right. It centers self-improvement as a personal act. It's for you, not for external validation.
Yeah.
Which point 03 then builds on with a pretty tough truth, actually.
Which is?
That sometimes self-love isn't just accepting where you are, but honestly admitting you don't like yourself and coming up with steps to change the things that you know you can and will do better.
Oof. So it pairs self-love with accountability.
Yes, it's not just passive acceptance.
And this internal focus, it seems to extend to understanding recurring patterns too, like
Yeah.
point 19 mentions looking at patterns in failed relationships.
And taking ownership of your part in them.
Right. That's never easy.
No. And point 20 introduces perhaps the most challenging idea in this whole section.
Go on.
It asks you to consider what you subconsciously love about the problems you struggle to get over.
Whoa. What you love about them.
Yeah. It says nobody holds on to something unless they think it does something for them. Usually keeps them safe.
Wow. Okay, that's a totally different way to look at resistance, isn't it?
It implies the problem might actually be serving some hidden function for us.
Which leads straight into point 21, suggesting maybe the current problem in your life is not the problem, but that your perception is skewed.
Exactly. Are you fighting a ghost? An illusion? Is the obstacle really internal rather than external?
That's a lot to chew on.
It is. And this self-examination also involves reflecting on genuine failures. That's point 22, and really committing to learning and doing better, especially, it notes, for those who depend on you.
And point 73, who you are when nobody's around. That gets right to the core of authenticity, doesn't it?
Absolutely. This entire section kind of builds towards the concept mentioned in point 101, your most fully realized self.
So the synthesis here seems to be that real self-understanding, real growth, it requires looking beyond how others see you.
Points 71 and 72 touch on that influence of culture and expectations.
Right. And confronting the possibility that maybe you're holding on to challenges because they offer some weird form of safety or serve a purpose you haven't recognized.
It's about identifying the self you want to build, independent of external opinion or that subconscious resistance.
Okay, so we've looked forward, we've looked inward. The list also encourages gaining perspective by looking at your life through different lenses.
Yeah, shifting the viewpoint, past, future, even from the outside looking in.
Point 06 feels like a simple but really profound anchor for that.
What is that?
The things in the past that you thought you'd never get over and how insignificant they seem today.
Yes. It's a potent reminder, isn't it? Today's mountain might genuinely be tomorrow's molehill.
Because you have a history of overcoming.
Exactly. And then projecting forward, point 13 asks how you'll see this period in, say, 20 years.
What you will wish you had done or stopped doing, what you overlooked.
What little things you didn't realize you should have appreciated. It's like your future self sending a message back to you about what really matters right now.
And points 14 and 15 offer a kind of sobering perspective on time and memory, too.
Yeah, how few of your days you really remember.
Ouch. And the high probability that this specific day probably won't be one of them, decades from now.
It really pushes you to consider the value of the present moment as you're living it, doesn't it?
Definitely. And thinking about how your life might appear to others, point 26 suggests that.
Right, but not for comparison or judgment, it seems.
No, purely as a way to step outside your own immediate emotional reaction. Just gain a more detached view.
And point 23 offers this really radical reframing.
Which is?
The ways in which your current situation, though perhaps unplanned or unwanted, could be the path to the place you've actually always wanted to be.
Okay.
If only you'd begin to think of it that way. It suggests your current reality, just seen differently, could actually be the stepping stone you needed.
That requires a huge mental shift.
It does, but it's powerful.
And it's also important to look back with appreciation, not just forward or inward, right? Point 27 reminds you of things you've already accomplished.
Yes. And point 99 is maybe even more striking. How many times in your life you went to bed crying, wishing you could have what you have now?
Oh, wow. That comparison, that's a potent tool for perspective right there.
So the synthesis here is really that perspective isn't fixed. It's something you actively cultivate.
By deliberately changing your viewpoint.
Exactly. Viewing your present from the past, the future, even externally, it can loosen the grip of those immediate anxieties and help you appreciate the bigger journey and even your current reality.
Okay, another major area the list highlights is connection. Connecting with others, relationships, building empathy.
Yes, a really significant theme.
Point 12 brings it right down to the micro level, which I liked. The little bits of genuine human connection we often just overlook.
Like
The people you smile at on the street, the people whom you text regularly, the family you could stand to visit more.
It's about consciously valuing that human ecosystem around you, all those little threads.
And then extending that outwards. Point 34 prompts thinking about how you can help other people.
Even in really small ways.
Yeah, Even just by sitting down to speak with an old friend, buying someone dinner, sharing an article or a quote that resonated with you. Small acts of connection, generosity.
And a key insight for relationships seems to come from points 35 and 36, recognizing that you do not think the exact way other people think.
Which seems obvious, but we forget it all the time.
We do, and that issues might stem from lapses in your understanding of them and theirs of you, rather than some inherent flaw in them or you.
That shifts the focus completely, from conflict to communication and empathy.
It's a crucial point, and it leads to another powerful idea in points 37 and 38, that people are best understood, defined even, not by isolated emotional flare-ups or our assumptions about them, but by their consistent patterns of behavior.
Okay. That feels like a more reliable lens for evaluating relationships, maybe.
I think so, and this understanding can even change how you navigate conflict. Point 92 suggests thinking about how to fight better.
Fight better. What does that mean?
Communicating in a way that doesn't immediately put people on the defensive. Finding ways to actually deepen connection through disagreement instead of creating distance.
That's a high bar, but important.
Definitely. And the list also includes some pretty profound prompts about living for others.
Right. Points 49 and 93 ask who you would be happy to also live for if your own desires and interests were no longer your sole priority.
And a really poignant one, point 94, the people who depend on you and how absolutely devastated they would be if you were no longer in their lives.
That hits hard.
So the insight here, I think, is that genuine connection and empathy aren't just about feeling things for others.
It's more active than that.
Yes. It's built on intentionally trying to understand their perspectives, recognizing their value, and consciously contributing to their well-being through consistent actions. And focusing on that can really pull you out of purely self-centered thought loops.
Okay. So beyond our internal world and our relationships, the list also pushes us to appreciate the world around us more, engage creativity, ponder the really big picture stuff.
Yes, broadening the scope significantly.
Point 60 encourages finding joy in the little wonders. I like this one.
The sensory details.
Yeah, the smell of rain, your favorite t-shirt, songs you loved as a kid, your favorite food. It's a reminder to just ground yourself in present sensory experience sometimes.
And point 41 makes you stop and appreciate the sheer effort behind creativity.
How so?
It mentions the years of practice it takes to learn to play each instrument in your favorite song, or just the act of coming up with a melody.
Right. It fosters a sense of gratitude for the creative work of others, which we often take for granted.
Even something as seemingly simple as point 42, thinking about where your food comes from,
Connects you to a whole system.
a vast network of processes, people, nature, all sustaining you, often invisibly.
And then the list just zooms way out dramatically. Point 10, the cosmos.
And how despite being insignificant specks, we are all essential to the core patchwork that makes up humanity.
That's a paradox right there. Insignificant yet essential.
And point 86, contemplating how infinite the universe is, how infinitesimal we are, how perhaps each is a reflection and extension of the other.
Wow. Heavy stuff.
But the synthesis here seems to be that appreciation, that sense of connection to something larger than ourselves.
Other it's just the smell of rain.
Or the effort behind art, or the food system, or the entire cosmos.
Right.
It can provide powerful context. It pulls us out of those narrow, self-focused anxieties.
And all these themes, they seem to loop back to the core idea of the list. The huge power you have in choosing what thoughts you entertain, what you focus on, what you decide is worth the effort.
Point 54 is incredibly direct about this, the fact that it is hard to do everything.
It lists examples, right? Relationships are hard, being single is hard.
A job is hard, not living your dreams is hard, the insight, everything is hard. It's just a matter of what you think is worth the effort.
That immediately leads to point 55, which is just.
What you think is worth that effort, what you are willing to suffer for.
And that's not meant to be morbid, is it? It's more like a clarity exercise.
Exactly. What struggles are actually meaningful to you because they align with your deeper purpose or values.
Okay, so how do you gain that clarity? How do you change what you believe is worth it? The list offers a really direct path in point 79.
Yes. The way to change your life is to change the way you think.
And the way to change the way you think is to change what you read.
Or what you listen to, as points 80 and 81 suggest. What perspectives you deliberately expose yourself to.
So it's about consciously curating your mental input.
To intentionally shape your beliefs and focus. Yes.
The list also probes motivations beyond just like avoiding pain or difficulty. Point 58 asks about your singular deepest fear.
And then point 59 immediately follows with what your singular deepest fear tells you about your singular deepest desire.
So it reframes fear, not as an endpoint, but almost like a compass pointing towards what you truly yearn for.
That's a great way to put it.
And thinking about what motivates you when fear is no longer an option, that's points 62 and 63. What drives you when you're not just running away from something?
And points 75 and 76 offer these fascinating thought experiments.
Like imagining reality is an illusion you control.
Yes, or that fate somehow depends on your thoughts. It forces you to confront the potential power your internal state holds over your perceived reality, or at least how you experience it.
And instead of always searching for what's wrong, point 88 offers this simple, beautiful counterpoint, just focusing on what yes feels like to you.
Learning to recognize those positive signals when something feels aligned and right.
Yeah.
This whole section really synthesizes around the idea that your thoughts aren't just passive reactions, they're active choices, choices that shape your experience.
And the list challenges you to identify what you truly value, what struggles are meaningful for you, and what kind of information inputs will actually support the direction you want to go.
Exactly.
So, okay, how do you integrate all these ideas? Obviously not about ticking off 101 boxes on a checklist.
No, definitely not. It's about using these as prompts, invitations for your own reflection, finding the ones that spark something for you.
It's maybe remembering what you've already overcome, like point 27 says, what you've accomplished.
Or finding small, practical ways to improve your daily life. Point 18 talks about that, like just cleaning a space or learning one simple new skill. Tangible things.
And actively cultivating belief. Point 90 suggests creating a mantra, or many mantras.
All of which work to support your unwavering conviction that the future will be different and you will figure out how to make it so.
So it's about using thought to actually build resilience.
Yes, and looping back to that idea of the most fully realized self from point 101.
Yeah.
The list basically posits that the very first step is simply conceiving of that self once you can picture who you aspire to be.
Then the process of directing your thoughts and actions towards that vision can actually begin. So this whole deep dive into the source material, it really reveals a core message, I think. Redirecting your thoughts, moving them away from the things that just consume you, and towards things that enrich you, your future vision, your self-understanding, your connections, perspective, appreciation. It isn't just a mental exercise.
No, it feels more fundamental. It's a way you participate in creating your reality, a powerful act of conscious living.
Yeah.
These points from the list, they're just sparks, really. The real illumination comes from deciding which ones resonate with you personally, and then giving them the focused, deliberate attention they deserve.
And if we consider some of the final thoughts on the list, like points 85 and 87 suggesting that often the answer to really complicated questions turns out to be surprisingly simple.
And that simple answer can often be love.
Right. And then point 91 says that the kind of love worth choosing and keeping is the kind that ever so slightly tilts the axis on which your world spins.
Leaving nothing to ever be the same again.
Then maybe here's a final thought for you, the listener, to consider. If the simple answer to complexity often turns out to be love, and love worth choosing tilts the axis of your world, what axis are you choosing to tilt with your thoughts today?